Alright y'all, hey, what's up? And like I said, welcome to another alternative factuals video. And if you're absolutely new to the channel, please be sure to like, share, and of course subscribe. You know, I gotta get into the usuals before I dive into anything specific about the episode. And without further ado, let's kind of jump into it. So today that came out in terms of Cloak and Dagger, their episode was called Viking Town Sound. And remember, this is the 7th episode in the 2nd season, all that good stuff. Now, me personally, I wasn't too crazy about episode 6, which is why I didn't really talk too much about it or didn't make a video about it last week or anything like that. But this is actually something very interesting as I rewatched episode 6 and kind of going into episode 7 in season 2. But I'll get into that when I kind of go into the full breakdown of episode 7 and its relevance and how they kind of introduced the character of Despair, who introduced himself as Andre earlier in this season. But all right, let's kind of go over it. So we're still dealing with the repercussions of the last season, where Tandy's kind of dealing with this, like, you can never really tell if she's in her head or if she's flashing back or if she's actually in real time. And I like that in a sense where, like, obviously you know because you know her character as a whole, but in general it's just like I like that back and forth, because in reality, like, you don't really know, like, you're not absolutely sure what's taking place, because she can wake up at any moment in the episode and then just simply be like, yeah, I was asleep the whole time. But that's only like the first couple minutes. So like I said, we're watching the episode, and you know, she wakes up in the motel and trying to find out that I forget the lady's name, Aaliyah, if I remember correctly. She was working with Andre, and obviously we know Andre has powers at this point. And she's over here trying to get Tandy to kind of give up her hope so that way she can become one of the girls, basically, like run this sex ring. And she doesn't completely treat the girls like crap, but she knows, or the other girls are well aware of what's going on in terms of this is what they have to do in order for them to have a sustainable living life, and so that way it's not completely terrible. So it's just very interesting. Now, this is the part of the episode that I'm actually really interested in, and that's like Andre and Mayhem and everyone kind of dealing with the physical aspect of like negative emotions, and that's like the records that are being played. Now, there's only one area that we've seen so far, at least we previously thought, where the records existed, and that was inside of Cloak's dark dimension, well, his dark force. So I'm going to do a little comic book history for you. So I did mention this in a previous episode previous video that I did, and Despair in the comic books is a villain who actually in some way, shape, or form, and depending on which publication, who wrote it or whatever like that, but Despair was someone who actually drew power from the dark force as well. He was someone who actually gave Cloak his dark force form, and he was very much responsible for his abilities. Now, obviously for the TV show, it is very different. He did not give him his powers. He is somebody else who just managed to get powers around the same time. And what I'm gathering from the episode is that Despair, aka Andre, his powers are linked to the dark force as well. So when he's playing the records of people's negative emotions, and you see that Mayhem is actually in the room the same time he is, but kind of watching him like in cut, being kind of low key about it, at that point you can realize, like, okay, they're clearly in the same place, meaning he's drawing his power from the dark force. The thing about him is he's not physically in the dark force. He himself is still in the real world, but his abilities allow him to kind of manifest an astral form of himself into the dark force, and he's able to play people's darkest moments, or points in time in their life when they felt really low, or see what their hopes and dreams are, as well as their worst fears, and he's able to feed on it. That's like basically the basis of his power. And when it comes to like his abilities and him feeding off of negative emotions or anything like that, I do feel like that's very consistent with his comic books, because that is exactly what he sought to do in the comics, where he sought to do this with several characters, where he wanted to get them really low, really depressed, really into dark places, and then absorb and feed off of that energy. But what I like about this character in the TV show is that they gave him, like, his powers had a purpose, where he's human, he got these abilities, but in retrospect, because he got these abilities, he has a side effect as well, and that's simply he gets these excruciatingly painful headaches, and the only way he can subside that pain is if he absorbs that negative energy from somebody else, which gets me to this point of my prediction, where I feel like his powers or his purpose is not simply just to keep absorbing people's energy. His main goal is to find out how to achieve basically unlimited amount of absorption of his power, so that way the headaches can go away forever. Because in this episode we see the back and forth between him and Avita's, I believe, aunt, or it might be her godmother, one of the two. They're going, like, he's talking with her, trying to figure out a way that he can become a god so that way his pain can go away. And even though his first initial, I guess, intention is to make his pain kind of disappear so that way he can feel better, in reality, we do know once he gets that power, it's going to corrupt him, and he's going to want to throw the whole world into despair, literally darkness and sadness. So that was something very interesting about the episode, where they spent 6 kind of developing and kind of getting to know what he's capable of in terms of his abilities. But in this episode, you kind of see it come to full fruition. So that's something I really much enjoyed. But the end of the episode was very interesting as well. And this is why it's interesting. Mayhem is destroying all these records, destroying all these negative memories, or, you know, whatever ties to some form of emotion in the Dark Force. Remember, because she is still currently in the Dark Force. She was left behind when Tandy basically went in there to retrieve Detective Connors and her, but she didn't make it out because she was too busy trying to be all into herself. So she was left behind. And at that point, like I said, I guess she put 2 and 2 together that, okay, these records are associated with this dimension, and he's playing these records and they affect the real world. So if I can destroy these records or make enough noise in here or do something to disrupt the dark force that exists inside of Tyrone currently, then I can probably get out of here. And based on how the episode ended, it seems like because of the disruption that she put into the dark force, that yeah, she's about to escape, because literally all this dark energy is pouring out of him, because at this point she has literally ruined the domain in which a lot of that negative energy or emotions or memories kind of exist right now. He is the portal. He is basically where despair is trying to permanently access. At least that's my prediction. Remember, Despair or Andre only can get temporary access, and he's not physically there. He can't physically access this place, but he can only tap into it. So Tyrone is a place in which he's trying to get into, so Tyrone is the lock, and basically Despair has to find the key in order to get in there so that way he no longer has those headaches. So I think that's where this is ultimately going, where he's going to try and take Tyrone's power, or somehow try and siphon off of his abilities and kind of make himself whole, but also make himself way more powerful with the Dark Force abilities. But I actually enjoyed this episode. It was a lot of psychological representation with the records. There was different, you know, the fact that Despair actually wore white gloves, because even though he's kind of using these records to manipulate people's memories, he's also making sure not to leave an imprint of himself on there, because maybe somehow it can have a backlash on him, or parts of himself will be like the fingerprints of himself will be on those records, and then somehow it'll play dark memories of his. So he's like, when in his physical astral form or whatever like that, or whatever you want to call it, he actually does take the time to be careful, meaning either he's not as bad as we may perceive him, or there's a little bit more to his powers, and there might be bigger consequences if he does not do this right. But let me know what you think about the episode. I thought it was actually pretty good. One of the better episodes. Like I said, season 2 is doing a lot better compared to season 1. And if you're new to the channel, please be sure to like, share, and of course subscribe. Leave your comments down below. Check out our other social media and all that good stuff in our podcast. And I hope to see you later on.